My husband's ex wants him back. But it gets worse. When I married Jake, I knew he had a past, just like anyone else. But I never imagined his past would knock on our front door. Literally. It was a rainy Thursday evening when the doorbell rang. I was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of pasta, while Jake was in the living room, scrolling through his phone. He didn't move to answer it, so I wiped my hands and went to see who it was. The moment I opened the door, my stomach dropped. There she stood. Madison, Jake's ex-fiancée. The woman he had almost married before me. The one he had left after she cheated on him with his best friend. She looked different from the photos I had seen. Thinner, more desperate. Her red lipstick was slightly smudged and her wet hair clung to her face. "Is Jake home?" she asked, her voice trembling. I hesitated. "Yes, but—" Before I could finish, Jake appeared behind me. His entire body tensed. "Madison? What the hell are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you," she pleaded. "Please." I crossed my arms. "You can say whatever you need to say right here." Madison's eyes flickered to me for a brief second before locking onto Jake again. "It's important." Jake sighed, then turned to me. "Babe, can you give us a second?" I didn't like it, but I wasn't about to start a fight on our doorstep. "Fine, but don't take too long." I stepped back inside, leaving the door slightly ajar so I could still hear. Madison's voice was frantic. "Jake, I made a mistake. Leaving you was the worst decision of my life. I've changed, I swear. I want you back." I expected Jake to shut her down immediately, but instead there was a pause. My heart pounded in my chest. Then, finally, he spoke. "Madison, you don't get to show up after all these years and say that. I'm married now. I love my wife." Relief flooded through me. But then Madison whispered something that made my blood run cold. "I know what you did." A long silence followed. "What are you talking about?" Jake's voice was low, cautious. Madison leaned in. "I know what you did the night before our wedding. I have proof." My grip on the door tightened. Jake exhaled sharply. "Madison, stop playing games." She laughed, but it was bitter. "You think I'm lying? I have messages, photos. If your wife knew—" I didn't let her finish. I pushed the door open and stepped outside. "If I knew what?" Both of them turned to look at me. Jake looked terrified. Madison smiled. "Ask him where he was the night before our wedding. Ask him who he was with." My pulse pounded in my ears. "Jake?" He shook his head. "It's not what you think." "Oh, but it is," Madison cut in. "He was with someone else. And guess what? It wasn't me." I felt like the ground beneath me was crumbling. "Jake, tell me she's lying." His silence said everything. Madison smirked. "I'll leave you two to talk." And with that, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. I looked at my husband, the man I trusted, the man I loved. "Jake," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Tell me the truth." And then, he did. And it was worse than I ever could have imagined. The rain had started to fall harder, but I barely noticed. My entire body was numb, my breath shallow. Jake ran a hand through his hair, avoiding my gaze. "It's not what it sounds like, Anna." "Then explain it," I snapped. "Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you cheated on Madison the night before your wedding, with someone else." His jaw clenched. It wasn't cheating. We were already falling apart. I let out a bitter laugh. "So that makes it okay?" Jake exhaled sharply. "Fine. Yes, I slept with someone the night before I was supposed to marry Madison. But what?" My voice cracked. He swallowed hard. "It was with her sister." The world around me tilted. "What?" Jake finally met my eyes. "Madison's younger sister, Claire." I stumbled back, feeling as though someone had knocked the air from my lungs. I had met Claire before, at a party, in passing. She was sweet, quiet, the complete opposite of Madison. And now, suddenly, I couldn't unsee the resemblance. You slept with your fiancé's sister the night before your wedding? I whispered, my voice trembling. Jake took a step closer, but I recoiled. He froze, his hands tightening into fists at his sides. Anna, it was a mistake. A huge, drunken mistake. I regretted it the second it happened. I wanted to scream. And you never thought to tell me? You let me marry you without knowing? I didn't think it mattered. I let out a hollow laugh. It didn't matter. My voice rose with disbelief. You betrayed Madison, you betrayed her family, and now she's holding it over you. And I'm just supposed to be okay with that? Jake looked down. I didn't want to lose you. Tears blurred my vision. And what if Madison isn't bluffing? What if she really does have proof? He shook his head. Claire and I never spoke about it again. There were no messages, no pictures. I don't know what Madison thinks she has, but it's not real. A lump formed in my throat. And if it is? Jake hesitated. I turned away, wiping my face. I need some air. Anna, wait. But I was already walking. I sat in my car, staring at the dashboard, my mind racing. I had thought Jake was the one person in the world I could trust completely. Now, I didn't know what to believe. Then my phone buzzed. A message. From an unknown number. I told you he wasn't who you thought he was. Attached was a blurry image. I clicked on it, my stomach twisting. It was a screenshot of a text conversation. A message from Jake sent years ago. I wish I had met you first, Claire. It was never supposed to be her. I clapped a hand over my mouth. The rain poured harder outside, but inside a storm was brewing that no one could stop. And I had no idea what to do next. Would you like me to keep going? This could go in so many directions. Revenge, confrontation, or an even darker twist. Let me know what you're thinking. The message burned into my vision. I wish I had met you first, Claire. It was never supposed to be her. I reread it, my hands trembling. The rain pounded against the windshield, the inside of the car feeling smaller by the second. This wasn't just a one-night mistake. This was something deeper, something that made my stomach twist in knots. I needed answers. Without thinking, I clicked on the unknown number and called. It rang twice before she picked up. I told you he wasn't who you thought he was. Madison's voice was smooth, smug. Where did you get that text? I asked, gripping the steering wheel. She let out a low chuckle. Claire sent it to me a long time ago. She was scared. She felt guilty, but she also felt something else. I swallowed hard. What are you talking about? Madison sighed. You're smart, Anna. Put it together. Do you really think Claire never had feelings for him? That Jake never felt the same? One night? A mistake? No, honey, it was more than that. My head spun. You're lying. Madison's tone turned icy. Am I? I wanted to hang up, but my fingers were frozen. If this was real, why didn't you say anything before? Because I wanted him to suffer, she admitted. I wanted him to be haunted by what he did. But when I found out Claire left town right after your wedding, that she cut all contact, that's when I knew. Knew what? I whispered. That he was in love with her. A sharp pain shot through my chest. Number Jake loved me. He married me. But the way his face had gone pale when Madison showed up, the way he had hesitated before telling me the truth, the weight of reality crashed down on me. I'll send you everything, Madison continued, her voice gentler now. Because you deserve to know. And because Jake deserves to finally face what he's done. The call ended. A second later, my phone vibrated again. Dozens of screenshots, photos, even a voicemail. With shaking hands, I pressed play. Claire's voice came through, barely above a whisper. Jake, I can't do this anymore. You chose her, but you still text me. You still act like... Like there's something between us. I love you, but I can't be your secret. Please don't call me again. My vision blurred. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a love he had never let go of. And I was just the woman he settled for. I don't remember driving home. My mind was a haze of betrayal and heartbreak. By the time I parked, Jake was already outside, standing under the porch light, waiting. His eyes were desperate, worried. Anna, I shoved the phone into his hands. Explain. He looked down at the screen, scrolling through the messages, his jaw tightening with every second. When he reached the voicemail, his face paled. I crossed my arms. Say something. He looked up, his eyes full of guilt. I never wanted you to find out like this. Then how was I supposed to find out? I snapped. When she showed up at our anniversary dinner? When she sent me a wedding gift signed with love? Claire? He ran a hand through his hair, frustration all over his face. Anna, I love you. It was complicated. I took a step back, my voice trembling. Did you ever love me? Or was I just the safe choice? Jake reached for me, but I pulled away. Please, he whispered. I married you. I built a life with you. That means something. I shook my head. But it wasn't love, was it? He didn't answer. And in that silence, I knew the truth. Tears filled my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I deserve better. Jake's face crumpled. Anna, don't do this. But I was already walking inside, past the life we had built together, past the memories I had thought were real. Because the worst part of it all? I wasn't heartbroken that Jake had loved someone else. I was heartbroken that I had spent years thinking I was the love of his life, when all along I had only been a shadow of what he really wanted. I locked myself in the bedroom, my heart pounding against my ribs. Jake banged on the door. Anna, please, let's talk about this. Talk? What was there to talk about? That he had been in love with someone else for years? That I had been nothing but a safety net? I grabbed my suitcase from the closet, tossing in clothes with shaking hands. My mind was screaming at me to run. Just go. Leave him in his mess. But then, a thought struck me. What if this wasn't just about love? What if Jake was hiding something even worse? I froze. My gaze landed on his nightstand where his phone was charging. He never let me go through his phone. Not once in all our years together. I had never thought twice about it. I had trusted him. Now? I grabbed the phone. It was locked. But I knew his password. Hands trembling, I unlocked it and went straight to his messages. There she was. Claire. A thread of text from months ago. No recent ones, nothing damning. I scrolled faster, checking emails, his call log. Nothing. Then, just as I was about to give up, I saw something. A hidden folder in his photos. I clicked on it. And my stomach dropped. The first picture was of Claire, a selfie, smiling. Then another. Her standing in front of a house I didn't recognize. Then another. Her sleeping, a timestamp from last year. Then I saw the videos. With shaking hands, I pressed play. The first was nothing unusual, just Claire laughing at something off camera. But then came the next one. She was crying. Jake, stop filming me. This isn't funny. His voice came through the speaker, calm, almost soothing. You need to listen to me, Claire. We had something real. I know you still feel it. She shook her head. I don't, not anymore. Jake's voice darkened. Then why haven't you told Anna? If you're so over me, why haven't you told her everything? Claire looked terrified. Because you scare me, Jake. The video ended. My vision blurred. I sat down on the bed, struggling to breathe. Jake hadn't just had an affair. He had been obsessed with Claire, controlling her, and she had been afraid of him. A cold shiver ran through me. Madison's words echoed in my head. Claire cut off all contact. Or maybe she hadn't cut contact. Maybe she had disappeared. I barely heard the knocking on the door anymore. I was too busy staring at my husband's phone, at the undeniable proof that he was dangerous. I had to get out of here. But first, I had to know the truth. I clicked on Jake's recent location history, and there it was, an address, visited multiple times over the last few months. I copied it into my own phone, shoved my things into my bag, and opened the door. Jake looked at me, desperate. Anna, please, just. I pushed past him. Don't follow me, Jake. I ran to my car, slamming the door shut just as he reached the driveway. I didn't know what I was driving toward, but I knew one thing for sure. If Claire had disappeared, Jake had something to do with it. My hands gripped the steering wheel as I sped down unfamiliar streets, following the address that Jake had visited so many times. I could hardly breathe, my thoughts a storm of anger and confusion. How had I missed all of this? How had I been so blind to the man I had married? The GPS led me into a quiet, secluded neighborhood at the edge of town. The houses here were larger, more isolated, as if the owners preferred their privacy. I turned onto a narrow street, and then I saw it. A large, dark house at the end of the cul-de-sac. It was eerie. There were no lights on, the windows dark. But I couldn't stop now. I parked a little ways down the street, my heart racing. The house looked abandoned, but the more I stared at it, the more it seemed like the kind of place you could hide a secret. Was this the place Claire had gone to? Had she been forced into silence by Jake? I grabbed my bag and walked toward the house, my steps heavy on the pavement. The gate creaked as I pushed it open, and I moved toward the front door, hesitating for just a moment. I rang the doorbell. No answer. I knocked. Still nothing. I tried the handle. Locked. I was about to give up when a faint sound reached my ears. Footsteps. The door creaked open just slightly. A man's face appeared in the crack, his expression cautious. Yes? I froze. He looked familiar. His features were sharp, his eyes dark, but there was something unsettling about him. I'm looking for Claire, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The man's face didn't change. He glanced over his shoulder, then back at me. I don't know who you're talking about, he said coldly. I didn't back down. I know Claire stayed here. I know Jake. The man's eyes flickered for a split second, but it was enough. You shouldn't be here, he said, his voice low. Go home. I took a step forward, feeling the adrenaline flood my veins. No. I need to know what's going on. Where is Claire? What did Jake do to her? The man's jaw tightened, and before I could react, he slammed the door shut. I stood there for a moment, stunned. Then I heard it. The unmistakable sound of the lock turning. Without thinking, I yanked the door open. Inside was a dimly lit hallway, and the house felt wrong. The air was thick with something I couldn't put my finger on. Fear, maybe? Or the remnants of a lie that had been buried for too long. The man stepped out, blocking my way. You shouldn't have done that. I didn't move. Where is she? I demanded. He gave me a cold smile. You don't understand. This isn't your fight, sweetheart. Where is Claire? He stepped toward me, his eyes narrowing. You're asking questions you don't want the answers to. You don't know what you're dealing with. I swallowed hard, my body tense, ready to run if necessary. I think I do. I know enough to know that Jake is hiding something dangerous. I'm not leaving until I get the truth. He stared at me for a long moment as if deciding whether to stop me. Then, to my surprise, he stepped aside. Fine. You want the truth? He gestured toward the stairs. Go upstairs. You'll find everything you need. I didn't hesitate. I rushed up the stairs, heart pounding in my chest. The house seemed to stretch on forever, the walls lined with old portraits and dusty furniture. The deeper I went into the house, the more I felt like I was trespassing in a world I didn't belong to. Finally, I reached a door at the end of a narrow hallway. It was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was sparse, but it was the walls that caught my attention. They were covered in photos. Hundreds of them. There were pictures of Jake, of Claire, of Madison, all taken from various angles, most of them candid, as if someone had been watching them for a long time. And then I saw it. A picture of Claire, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. In the background, Jake's shadow loomed. I stumbled backward. I couldn't breathe. Looking for this? I turned, and there he was. Jake, my husband. But he didn't look like the man I had married. His eyes were wild, his face twisted in something close to desperation. "What the hell is this, Jake?" I whispered, my voice breaking. He stepped into the room, blocking the door. "You don't understand, Anna." "I understand enough." "No, you don't." His voice was harsh, his tone cold. Claire was never supposed to be part of this, but she kept getting in the way. I took a step back, my heart racing. In the way of what? Jake's lips curled into a bitter smile. "In the way of us." I froze, the words hanging in the air like a weight. "Us?" "Yes, Anna. You think I married you because I loved you? I married you because you were safe." I shook my head. No, that's not true. You love me. You..." His eyes darkened. "No, I married you because I had to. Because you were there and I couldn't have Claire. She was too unpredictable, too wild." I could barely comprehend his words. You're sick." Jake's smile faded. "You should have stayed out of this, Anna. Now you're going to have to pay the price." Before I could react, he lunged toward me. Jake's figure blurred as he lunged forward, his hand reaching out. But before he could grab me, I darted to the side, my body reacting instinctively. My heart pounded in my chest, but I couldn't let fear control me now. I had to get out of here. I bolted toward the door, but he was fast, faster than I expected. He grabbed my wrist, yanking me back with surprising strength. "You should have stayed out of this," he growled, his grip tightening. "Let go of me," I screamed, pulling against his hold. But just as I thought I might break free, a noise echoed through the house. A door opening, followed by hurried footsteps. The man I had seen earlier appeared in the hallway, his face pale and grim. "Jake, stop!" Jake froze, his grip loosening just slightly. "What are you doing?" the man asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jake didn't answer, but his face darkened. "She shouldn't have come here. She wasn't supposed to know anything." The man stepped forward, eyes darting between me and Jake. "I told you not to involve her. She's not part of this." I shook my head, trying to make sense of what was happening. "Part of what? What are you two talking about?" Jake's eyes flickered to the man, and for a moment the tension in the room was so thick it felt like the walls were closing in on me. "I didn't have a choice," Jake muttered. "She wouldn't stop looking. She was going to find out anyway." The man reached into his coat pocket, pulling out something small and shiny. It was a key. He walked over to the door of a closet at the far end of the room and unlocked it. I didn't understand. What was inside that closet? The man turned toward Jake. "It's time to end this." Jake didn't speak, but his expression said everything. He was torn. The man walked past me, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The door to the closet creaked open, and I heard him shuffle something around. I took a step forward, my pulse racing. I needed to know what was in there. What was the secret? Then, without warning, the man slammed the door shut, locking it again. "Come with me," he said quietly, motioning for me to follow. "What is going on?" I demanded. "Where's Claire? Where is she? What's in that closet?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he led me out of the room, down the hall, and back toward the stairs. He opened the front door, and the chill night air rushed inside. "I don't know how you got involved in this," he said, "but it's too late for you to turn back now." My heart pounded, my body on high alert. "What do you mean, too late?" He gave me a cold look. "You've seen too much, and now you'll have to deal with the consequences." I opened my mouth to protest, but he was already backing away, moving quickly toward the shadows of the yard. I wanted to chase him, demand more answers, but something in his expression told me I would be risking more than I was ready to handle. Instead, I watched as the man disappeared into the darkness. And then the front door slammed shut. The house was silent. I stood frozen on the porch, the air around me cold and still. Behind me, the faintest sound, an odd scraping noise, drifted from inside the house. My eyes snapped back to the window above the door, where a faint light flickered from behind the blinds. I wasn't sure what I had just seen, but something in me knew. I wasn't the only one who had been watching. A shadow moved across the room inside, and then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the light flickered out. I couldn't breathe. I turned and ran to my car, my hands shaking as I slammed the door shut. I didn't know what I had uncovered, I didn't know what was in that closet or what secrets Jake and this man had been hiding, but one thing was certain: I wasn't safe. I drove away from the house, the sound of my tires on the gravel the only thing breaking the silence of the night. But as I glanced in the rearview mirror, I thought I saw something, or someone, standing at the window of the house, watching me leave. I didn't look back. I didn't need to, because I knew I would never truly escape what I had found.